My name is Sabrina Coates, and I'm 33 years old. If you'd driven past my life a month ago, you'd probably have thought, she's fine, she's safe, she's got it together. Small, one-bedroom apartment with plants that somehow didn't die under my half-hearted watering schedule. A car that wasn't impressive but always started. Auto pay on my bills. A retirement account I actually contributed to. I built that life brick by boring brick. Spreadsheet by spreadsheet, one practical decision at a time. I was the sensible one, the friend you call when your tire blows out or your card gets declined, the person who always has a charger, a protein bar, and an umbrella, just in case. People say it like a compliment, but lately it had started to feel like a label you slap on a storage bin. Practical, stackable, forgettable. Grayson Holt, my boyfriend, was the opposite of a storage bin. He was 34, charming in that effortless, boyish way that makes servers linger on his side of the table. Sales, of course. Commission-based, high energy, always chasing the next big client. When we walked into a room, people noticed him first. I was the one who remembered where we parked. We'd been together 3 years, talking about getting engaged soon. Our parents adored each other. His mom already called me future daughter-in-law in that half-joking, half-hopeful way. My friends said I'd lucked out. He's exciting, they said. You balance him, they said. You two are perfect, they said. About 2 months before everything blew up, something in that perfect picture shifted. Not dramatically. No big fight. No dramatic confession. Just small things. Grayson started sleeping with his phone under his pillow. He'd take calls in the bathroom with the water running. Our easy banter turned into nitpicky arguments about stupid things. How I loaded the dishwasher. How I preferred cheap diners over the new trendy restaurant he liked. How I was too comfortable and didn't push myself enough. Like I was a lukewarm bath he'd been soaking in for too long. I'm not an idiot. I know what those signs usually mean. But every time I asked if something was wrong, he'd sigh, kiss my forehead, and say it was just work stress. A big client, demanding deadlines, the usual. And I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was that the life I'd been quietly planning, rings and houses and joint holiday invitations, was a lie. Then came Tuesday. Grayson was in the shower getting ready for a breakfast meeting, or at least that's what he called it. I was making coffee, trying to convince myself the knot in my stomach was just caffeine withdrawal. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice, then 3 times in a row. I told myself it was probably his boss or his mom. I walked into the bedroom, wiped my damp hands on my pajama shorts, and picked up the phone. The name at the top of the screen wasn't his boss or his mom. Natalie P. The preview line read, "Last night was incredible. When can I see you again?" My chest went cold, then hot. I unlocked his phone with the code I suddenly hated knowing and opened the thread. The messages started flirty. "You always knew how to make me laugh. I miss the way you look at me across a room." Then they turned explicit. Then logistical. Hotel names, dates, times, little hearts and winking emojis like they were picking a movie instead of scheduling a betrayal. My eyes blurred, but I kept scrolling because some part of me needed to see everything, needed to know this wasn't a misunderstanding, that I wasn't being dramatic. Then I saw it, a photo he'd sent, hotel room keycard on a glass table. In the corner of the frame, almost an accident, was a printed receipt. I zoomed in with shaking fingers. Natalie Pierce. I recognized the last name before my brain caught up with the first. Years ago, when we were still new and Grayson was oversharing to impress me with his emotional maturity, he'd told me about his ex-girlfriend, 2 years together in his late 20s, almost moved in. "We just outgrew each other," he'd said. "She got married, had a kid. I'm happy for her." He'd said her name then. Natalie Pierce. I stood there, barefoot on his bedroom carpet, staring at proof that my boyfriend was having an affair with his married ex-girlfriend. The shower turned off. Panic jolted me into motion. I snapped photo after photo of the text thread with my own phone. Receipts, hotel confirmations, can't stop thinking about you, all of it. Then I put his phone back exactly where it had been and walked out, heart pounding so loud I almost couldn't hear my own thoughts. I went to the kitchen and poured coffee like my hands weren't shaking. Grayson came out 15 minutes later, towel around his waist, hair damp, smiling like nothing in the world was off. "Morning, babe," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "Feel like brunch after my meeting?" I looked at him, the man I'd imagined standing next to me at an altar, and felt something inside me quietly crack. "Sure," I said. "Brunch sounds good." I needed time. Time to think. Time to decide what to do with the knowledge that my life had just split into before and after. We went to brunch. He talked about work, about some promotion he was eyeing, about his friend's upcoming engagement party. I nodded in the right places while my brain replayed those messages like a horror movie. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again? Every time my phone buzzed in my bag, I jumped, terrified it would be her texting him again. I didn't confront him. Not yet. That afternoon, Grayson said he had another client call at the coffee shop down the street. He left his laptop open on the dining table, still logged into his email. I stared at it for a long time. I wish I could say I closed it and walked away. I didn't. I sat down and searched hotel. 3 different hotels. 6 weeks. Confirmations sent to his email. Charges on his card. Dates that lined up perfectly with nights he'd claimed he was working late or grabbing drinks with coworkers. I screenshotted everything. Then I emailed the files to myself. When he came back, I was on my own laptop, the hotel receipts lined up in a neat, damning row. He leaned over the back of the couch and kissed the top of my head out of habit. "What are you working on?" he asked. "Just catching up on some stuff," I said. Then I turned my screen toward him. Silence. His hand dropped from my shoulder. His eyes flicked over the screen, recognition crashing over his face like a wave. For a second, he looked like he might lie. Then his expression hardened. "You went through my email?" he demanded. "You've been cheating on me with your married ex-girlfriend," I said. My voice surprised me. It was steady. "Let's not pretend you get to stand on the moral high ground here." He sat down on the chair across from me instead of beside me. That distance said everything. "It's not what you think," he started. "It's exactly what I think," I cut in. "You've been sleeping with Natalie for at least 6 weeks, probably longer." He looked away. "Does her husband know?" I asked. "That's not my problem," he said finally. I laughed. I actually laughed. "You're sleeping with a married woman and that's not your problem?" "Her marriage was already over," he snapped. "They're basically roommates at this point." "You don't get it, Sabrina. You don't understand what Natalie and I have. It's passionate. It's exciting. It's an affair," I said, with a child in the middle. He stood abruptly, anger flushing his face. "You know what? Maybe this is for the best," he said. "You and me, we're not right for each other. You're too safe, too rigid. You plan everything to death. You'd make a terrible wife. You don't have the strength real women have to handle a man like me." I felt that like a slap. Not the cheating, not even the lying. It was the contempt in his voice when he said safe, like stability was something to be ashamed of. "Get out," I said quietly. He blinked. "What?" "Get out of my life, Grayson. We're done." He scoffed. "This is my apartment. My name's on the lease. You're not on it. I want you gone by tomorrow." I stared at him, really stared, and realized something. I wasn't looking at the man I loved. I was looking at the man he'd always been when I wasn't paying attention. "Fine," I said, "tomorrow." He seemed almost disappointed that I didn't beg. Later, when I stood alone in his living room, surrounded by neatly stacked boxes of my things, I realized something else. Maybe I didn't have the kind of strength he meant. Reckless, selfish, thrill-chasing, but I had a different kind. The kind that would make sure the person Natalie had promised forever to got to see the same receipts I had. And that was the strength that was about to change everything. That night, after Grayson stomped around the apartment like a sulking teenager and finally left to clear his head, I sat alone on the couch with my laptop open and my heart in my throat. My boxes were already lined up by the door. My toothbrush was in my tote bag. My future was in shreds. There's a strange calm that settles in after a disaster, like the moment after a car crash when all the noise cuts out and you only hear your own breathing. That's what it felt like. I typed her name into the search bar with fingers that didn't feel like mine. Natalie Pierce. She wasn't hard to find. Public Instagram, public Facebook, public life. Her profile picture was all soft light and warm smiles. Her and a man about our age, his arm around her shoulders, a little girl perched on his hip with a pink bow in her hair. Eric and Emma's mama, her bio said. Wife, mom, coffee addict. My stomach lurched. I clicked through photo after photo. Family vacations, messy kitchen selfies, a candid of a little girl asleep on her father's chest. The husband, Eric Pierce, had kind eyes, the kind of tired sweetness you only see in people who get up at 3 a.m. to rock a crying baby and then still show up to work. They looked happy. At least they looked like they thought they were. I scrolled back to the hotel confirmations sitting in my inbox. Same dates as some of those smiling photos. Birthday party one weekend. Hotel room another. Matching Christmas pajamas. Another hotel. I stared at the screen, feeling something sour and electric coil in my chest. Grayson said their marriage was basically over, that they were just roommates, that their relationship was different, passionate, real. Maybe he believed that. Maybe she told him that. Maybe it was just the same script cheaters always use to feel like heroes instead of villains. But staring at those photos, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. If that were me in those pictures, if I were the wife, I would want someone to tell me, even if it hurt, especially if it hurt. I printed the hotel receipts and the email confirmations, one after another, the printer chugging quietly in the corner like it knew it was spitting out evidence. I sat at the dining table with a pen and a blank sheet of paper in front of me. For a long time, I didn't move, because whatever I wrote, someone's life would split into before and after, the way mine had. Finally, I started. Eric, you don't know me. I wish I didn't have a reason to write this. I'm writing because I believe you deserve to know the truth before you're lied to again. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like they'd been waiting. My name isn't important. I was in a relationship with a man named Grayson Holt for 3 years. I recently discovered he has been having an affair with your wife, Natalie Pierce. Enclosed are hotel receipts and confirmations tied to their meetings over the last 6 weeks. I wish I were wrong. I'm not. My throat tightened. I forced myself to keep going. I'm not sending this to hurt you, but because I think you have the right to know what's been happening so you can decide what to do with your own life. I'm truly sorry you're reading this at all. I signed it simply. Someone who knows what it feels like to be lied to. I found Eric's work address on what looked like a consulting firm's website. His face smiled back at me from the Our Team page. Professional photo, suit and tie, the same kind eyes from the family pictures. I folded the note and the copies of the receipts. My hand shook as I slid them into a plain envelope, wrote his name and address, and sealed it. It felt like sealing a fate. The next morning, I walked to the post office with that envelope burning a hole in my bag. I could have changed my mind. I could have turned around. I could have pretended none of this was my business. But every time I pictured that little girl with the pink bow, I kept walking. At the counter, I set the envelope down. Standard mail is fine, I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. The clerk weighed it, slapped on a stamp, and pushed it into a bin with a dozen other lives in paper form. That's it, she said. I nodded, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like the beginning of something I couldn't yet see. By afternoon, I was back at the apartment to collect the rest of my things. Grayson had texted earlier. Grayson, I'll be out from 2-4. Get whatever you need. No apology, no question, no remorse. The front door was unlocked. I stepped into what had been our living room, now half empty, my absence already rearranging the space. My boxes were stacked by the door like I was a shipment waiting for pickup. I moved mechanically. Clothes, books, the mug my sister bought me that said Spreadsheet Queen. My mixing bowls. The framed photo of me and my best friend on a beach trip before Grayson ever existed in my life. Every once in a while, I'd find some little thing of his mixed in. A cufflink, a cologne sample, a receipt from a bar. I set those on the counter like I was returning borrowed things. I refused to take anything that could give him a reason to call me later. When I was almost done, I heard the apartment door click. Grayson stepped inside, paused when he saw the boxes, then smirked like he'd won something. Wow, efficient as always, he said, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. You really don't waste time, do you? No, I said, taping a box shut. I don't anymore. He watched me for a moment, maybe expecting tears, begging, negotiation. Look, he started, running a hand through his hair. I am sorry that you found out that way. But honestly, Sabrina, this is for the best. You were never going to be happy with me long term. You're too small for the life I want. I felt my jaw clench. Small, I repeated. You know what I mean, he said. You like routine. You like predictability. That's fine, but that's not who I am. Natalie. He hesitated, then smiled to himself like he was remembering something intimate. Natalie understands passion. She doesn't need everything scheduled on a spreadsheet. She's not afraid of mess. She gets me in a way you never did. I picked up the last box and straightened, meeting his eyes. Then I hope you and Natalie enjoy whatever mess you've created, I said. I'm sure her husband will too. His smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing you need to worry about, I said. I'm done worrying for you. He stared at me, suspicion and annoyance flickering behind his eyes. You're overreacting, he said finally. Affairs happen. People work through them. You're throwing away 3 years because you can't handle the idea that I wanted more than just comfort. No, I said quietly. I'm walking away because I finally see you clearly. He rolled his eyes. Whatever helps you sleep at night, he muttered. Just be out by tomorrow. I've already talked to the landlord about taking you off the parking spot. There it was, the real priority. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say that he had the capacity to hear. At the door, I paused with my keys in my hand. For a second, I considered leaving them on the hook as some kind of symbolic gesture. Instead, I slipped them into my pocket. They were duplicates of his key, sure, but they also unlocked my storage unit and my mailbox. And I was done giving pieces of my life back to people who misused them. I'm sorry it ended this way, he said suddenly from behind me. I looked over my shoulder. I'm not, I said. Better now than after a wedding and a mortgage. His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but I walked out before he could. I moved into a small sublet that night, a temporary place with beige walls and bad lighting and a leaky faucet. But it was mine. No shared drawers, no toothbrush beside someone else's, no phone buzzing with secrets in the middle of the night. The next morning, my phone started buzzing instead. Unknown numbers, back-to-back calls. First, a message from an unsaved number. Unknown. What did you do? I didn't answer. Then Grayson's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. What? I said. What the hell did you do, Sabrina? He shouted. No hello, no breath, just fury. Don't play dumb. You sent something to Eric. He knows. Natalie's freaking out. He's threatening divorce. He's talking lawyers. What is wrong with you? For a second, I closed my eyes and let the question hang there. What is wrong with you? How many times had I asked myself that in the last few weeks, wondering if I was paranoid, if I was too sensitive, if I was making things up in my head? Now I knew the answer. Nothing, I said. I told the truth. You had no right, he spat. Eric had every right, I replied. He's the one who married her. He's the one raising a child with her. I gave him information he deserved to have. What he does with it is his business. You've destroyed her family. No, I said, my voice low. You and Natalie destroyed her family. I just refused to help you keep it a secret. He called me vindictive, petty, bitter, a few other names that said more about him than me. I listened for a moment, then hung up. He called again. I blocked him. 10 minutes later, a new unknown number lit up my phone. I almost ignored it, but something in me was curious. Hello? Is this Sabrina? A woman's voice demanded. It was raw, ragged around the edges, like it had been pulled through too many tears. Yes, I said slowly. This is Natalie, she said. What the hell gives you the right to... I didn't wait to hear the rest. I hung up and blocked that number too, my hand surprisingly steady. I thought that might be the end of it. It wasn't. An hour later, there was a knock on my front door. 3 firm, precise knocks. Not neighbor casual, not delivery driver impatient. I patted over in my socks, looked through the peephole, and froze. A man stood in the hallway, early to mid-30s, hair slightly mussed, like he'd run his hands through it 1,000 times. He wore jeans and a wrinkled button-down, and in one hand he held a car seat with a sleeping toddler inside. I opened the door. Can I help you? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment, taking in my face like he was memorizing the person who had detonated his life. Are you Sabrina Coates? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. He adjusted his grip on the car seat. I'm Eric, he said. Natalie's husband. Eric stood in my doorway like someone who had forgotten how to hold himself upright. His shoulders were tense, his jaw clenched, and even though his eyes were tired, they were sharp, like he'd come here not just for answers, but for confirmation that the world hadn't gone entirely insane. The toddler in the car seat, little Emma, if the captions on Natalie's photos were accurate, slept without stirring, her tiny fist curled around a plush rabbit. May I come in? Eric asked. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't accusing. It was something worse. It was exhausted. Yes, I said softly. Please. I moved aside, and he stepped in carefully, as though he didn't want to wake the child or disturb the air around us. He placed the car seat gently near the couch before lowering himself onto the edge of the cushions. I got him a glass of water. He took it, but didn't drink. Thank you, he said quietly. He stared at the water like it had answers in it. I'm sorry, I said. He blinked slowly, then looked up. You're not the one who should be sorry. We sat there in a silence so heavy it felt like a third person in the room. Finally, he spoke. When your letter came yesterday, I didn't open it at first. I thought it was some kind of mistake, junk mail, wrong address. Then I saw her name in the corner of one of the receipts. His hand trembled on the glass. I thought my heart was going to stop. I swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to hurt you, I said. You did the right thing, he interrupted gently. I needed to know. He set the glass down, exhaled shakily, and rubbed his forehead with his palm. "Can you tell me how you found out? Everything, please." I nodded, and then I told him. I told him about the buzzing phone, the texts, the explicit messages, the hotel receipts, the way Grayson had called me rigid and boring and said I'd make a terrible wife. I told him how he'd dismissed Natalie's marriage as not his problem, how he'd demanded I leave his apartment. Eric listened the entire time without interrupting. His face didn't contort. He didn't cry. He didn't lash out. He just absorbed it like someone who'd been bracing for impact long before he admitted it. When I finished, he leaned back and closed his eyes. "I knew something was wrong," he whispered. "I knew it. She's been weird about her phone for months. She said she was doing extra shifts at the clinic. She said she needed space. I trusted her." His voice cracked on the last 3 words. I stared at my hands. I trusted Grayson too. He opened his eyes, looked at me fully. "You thought you knew him?" "I thought I'd build my future with him," I said. "Turns out I was just stabilizing his life while he chased excitement elsewhere." Eric let out a breath that was almost a laugh, except there was no humor in it. "Sounds familiar." We sat there, 2 strangers connected by betrayal, sharing a grief neither of us had asked for. After a long moment, he straightened. "I've already talked to a lawyer," he said, his voice firming. "I'm filing for divorce. I'm going for primary custody. Natalie won't get to pretend this didn't happen." I nodded. "Good." "She told me this morning that it didn't mean anything," he said bitterly. "Then she said it did mean something, but only because she felt misunderstood at home. Then she said I drove her to it." My stomach twisted. "She's deflecting. Grayson did the same." "Yeah," Eric said, "that tracks." He looked over at his daughter, asleep in her car seat, her chest rising and falling in soft, even breaths. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't want her growing up thinking this is how love works, or that her dad was too weak to stand up for her." I felt my throat tighten. "You're not weak," I said quietly. "You're hurt. There's a difference." He nodded once, like he appreciated the distinction. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "Natalie said something to me this morning. She said Sabrina, meaning you, was jealous and probably made everything up. She said Grayson told her you were controlling, predictable, and insecure." I felt a small, bitter smile lift at the corner of my mouth. "That's funny," I said. "He told me I wasn't exciting enough for him, that I didn't have the strength real women have, whatever that means." Eric shook his head slowly. "Sounds like 2 people rewriting the narrative to avoid blaming themselves." Silence settled again, but this time it didn't feel as suffocating. More like a pause before something clearer. Finally, Eric stood. "I should go," he said. "Emma's due for her nap." I nodded and walked him to the door. When he picked up the car seat, he hesitated. "Thank you," he said simply, "for telling me, for being honest when the people closest to us weren't." "You deserve the truth," I said. His gaze softened. "So did you." And then he left. The fallout came fast. By the end of the week, everyone in our social circle knew something had happened. Grayson tried to spin the story. Said I'd snooped, said I'd been paranoid, said Natalie had seduced him, said anything except the truth. It didn't work. Word got around about the receipts, the hotel dates, the fact that Natalie was married. Mutual friends started texting me privately. "I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Grayson's been acting off for months. It makes sense now. You didn't deserve that." Some of his friends defended him online, but not loudly, not convincingly. Even people who liked Grayson stepped back. Affairs are one thing. Affairs with married people are another. Affairs that blow up a family with a toddler? That was a line many wouldn't cross, even for a friend. Natalie's world cracked too. Her sister unfollowed her. Her best friend posted a pointed quote about loyalty and betrayal. Someone leaked that Eric was filing for divorce and going for custody. That alone made several people in her circle go quiet. And through it all, my phone stayed silent. I didn't reach out to Grayson. He didn't dare try again. Not after our last exchange. Then came the call from an unknown number one afternoon. When I answered, the voice was soft and hesitant. "Hi, is this Sabrina?" "Yes, who's calling?" "It's Kelsey. I'm a friend of Grayson's." I nearly hung up then and there. She rushed on. "No, I'm not calling to defend him. Please don't hang up. I wanted to ask something." I said nothing. "Grayson's not doing well," she said delicately. "He told me what happened. Most of it. He said he messed up, but wants to explain himself. He asked if I could call you to see if you'd be willing to talk." "No," I said. Kelsey exhaled. "I figured you'd say that, but he really regrets it." "If he regrets anything," I said, "it's getting caught." Kelsey was silent a moment. Then she said quietly, "Honestly, probably true." There was something almost sad in her voice. I just wanted to hear your side, she admitted. People say things. He says things. I know Grayson. He lies when he's cornered. What really happened? For a moment, I debated whether to hang up. Instead, I told her, not everything, but enough. Enough for her to whisper, oh my God. Enough for her to say, I can't believe he said those things to you. Enough for her to murmur, yeah, you shouldn't talk to him, not until he grows up, if he ever does. Thank you, I said. No, she said softly. Thank you. I needed to know what I was defending all this time. She hung up without asking anything else. It was strange. The more people learned the truth, the quieter Grayson's world became, and the steadier mine did. Later that week, Eric texted me. Eric, lawyer found evidence of her using our joint credit card for hotel rooms. He says it strengthens the case. Eric, thank you again. I typed back. You don't owe me thanks. His reply came almost immediately. Eric, maybe not, but I'm grateful anyway. A pause, then, Eric, would you like to meet for coffee sometime? Just to talk. No pressure. I stared at the message for a long moment. Not because I was worried about anything romantic. It wasn't that. It was because I understood what he was really asking. Do you want to talk to someone who understands this kind of heartbreak without having to explain every inch of it? I typed, coffee sounds fine. But I added, as friends. Nothing more. His answer was instant. Eric, absolutely, friends. When we met later that week, it wasn't dramatic. We talked. We compared timelines. We tried to make sense of people who had torn holes through our trust, like it meant nothing. It wasn't closure, but it was something like alignment. Someone else who knew what it felt like when the life you were building suddenly wasn't yours anymore. As we left the cafe, he paused. Sabrina, he said gently, you realize this wasn't your fault, right? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I knew. But instead I said, I'm working on believing it. He nodded. Me too. He crossed the street, the afternoon sun catching in his hair, and I felt something inside me shift. Not pain, not anger, not bitterness. Just space. The kind you need before something better can grow. 4 months passed. Not suddenly, not neatly, just one small healing moment stacked on top of another, until the pain stopped being the first thing I felt in the morning. I moved into a new apartment across town, smaller than the place Grayson and I shared, but brighter, with windows that caught the sunrise and a kitchen that didn't carry ghosts. I bought my own furniture piece by piece instead of repurposing the leftovers of a life I'd outgrown. I slept through the night again. I cooked dinners that tasted like comfort instead of routine. I started going on weekend hikes alone, the quiet kind where you hear your mind soften. It wasn't a reinvention. It was a return. At work, things shifted too. My boss called me into her office one Thursday and told me I was being promoted. She said she'd noticed how much more focused I'd been lately, how decisive, how steady under pressure. If only she knew what kind of pressure had forged that steadiness. I started planning trips, Colorado in February, Ireland in the spring. I stopped waiting for someone to come with me before I let myself see the world. I wasn't safe or boring. I wasn't rigid or predictable. I was healing. And that was enough. Meanwhile, the fallout from the affair kept unfolding like a slow-motion avalanche. Eric updated me occasionally. Not every day, not dramatically, just sometimes when something new happened. Eric, divorce finalized today. Eric, judge granted me primary custody. Eric, she'll have supervised visitation for the first few months. I stared at that last message a long time. Supervised. That meant the court didn't believe Natalie's choices were just mistakes. They believed they were dangerous. I typed only, I'm glad you and Emma are safe. He replied with a photo. Eric and his daughter sitting on a picnic blanket at a park. She wore a mint green jacket, her hair in tiny pigtails, her smile wide and uncomplicated. The caption, New Beginnings. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because seeing her smile felt like witnessing proof that something beautiful can still grow after something destructive. As for Grayson, his descent was slower and more pathetic. Word got around that his employer dug into his company credit card statements. Those hotel charges he'd shrugged off as work dinners? They weren't dinners. They weren't work. Corporate policy wasn't forgiving. He was demoted, lost his team, lost his bonus track. According to a mutual friend, HR put him on a performance improvement plan, the kind nobody comes back from. He wasn't fired, but the writing was on the wall. And Natalie? From what I heard, she and Grayson imploded within a month of her separation from Eric. She realized he wasn't going to leave his life or his responsibilities for her, especially now that his financial footing was collapsing. After the breakup, she went on some sort of self-discovery spree online. Inspirational quotes, posts about breaking free from toxic men. Photos of girls' nights out with captions like, "Learning to love myself." The irony didn't just write itself, it embroidered a whole tapestry. Even her closest friends stopped engaging with her posts. People weren't cruel, but they weren't fooled either. When you blow up your own marriage and someone else's relationship for passion, it's hard to control the narrative after. Then one morning, the universe handed me a surprise. I was standing in line at my favorite downtown coffee shop, scrolling through weekend sale emails, when someone brushed past me carrying a to-go cup. I looked up. Grayson. He was thinner, paler, hair unstyled. He wore the same jacket he'd worn the day he kicked me out, but it looked more rumpled now, like he slept in it. For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other. His eyes widened with something like panic or shame or both. His mouth opened like he was about to say my name. But then, he didn't. He looked away, turned sharply, and practically fled out the door. I watched through the window as he walked down the sidewalk, cup in hand, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing for the world to fall in on him. And for a moment, a single fleeting moment, I felt sorry for him. I remembered the man who used to cook me dinner on Sunday nights, the one who tried to fix my leaky sink with YouTube tutorials, the one who made me laugh when I didn't want to. But then I remembered something else. He had chosen every one of the steps that brought him here. He chose to cheat. He chose to lie. He chose to humiliate me instead of apologizing. He chose to destroy a family for a thrill. He chose to twist my stability into a flaw. He chose all of it. I simply refused to help him hide from the consequences. Later that week, Eric sent another message. Just a picture of Emma painting in their backyard, her hands covered in blue and yellow streaks, sunlight catching in her hair. No caption this time. He didn't need one. I smiled at the photo, then set my phone down. Outside my window, the city lights flickered on one by one, soft and steady. My life wasn't perfect. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a sweeping, cinematic love story. But it was honest. It was peaceful. It was mine. In the end, Natalie was wrong. I did have strength. Real strength. Not the loud, reckless kind that burns everything down in the name of passion. The quiet strength of someone who chooses truth over illusion, integrity over convenience, self-respect over chaos. The kind of strength that doesn't need permission or validation. The kind that doesn't vanish the moment someone calls you boring. A strength built one honest, painful, necessary decision at a time. A strength that made new beginnings possible. For me, for Eric, for a little girl with paint on her hands. And for the first time in a very long time,